Hey, hello, howdy, and however I greet you when I meet you, and welcome to another episode of Get in Tune, a musical talk show. I want to continue this sort of lecture series I've been on by talking today about another aspect of artistic development as it relates to aspiring artists and even artists that are already in this sort of limbo of they're not hobbyists anymore, but they're not at the level they would like to be. A huge part of artistry that I myself am discovering on my artistic journey right now is finding your lane, finding your niche. And I don't want to say finding your genre on purpose, but finding your niche, finding your visual identity, finding your artistic identity, finding or writing repertoire that highlights all your unique skills and abilities, I should say, and making all of that work in your favor. This week, I went to an outdoor festival, and one of the artists that started the event was announced through her bio as a sort of contemporary R&B and soul vocalist, and then got on stage and did an exclusively praise and worship set. For those that don't know, I use the terms praise and worship instead of gospel because gospel simply means the good news. Gospel tends to lean towards Black American Christian based music. However, praise and worship is a section of the Black church experience. It's a part of the Sunday morning service. And there are certain songs that we do collectively as a part of the praise and worship collective. And she did only those. They weren't bad, they were actually decent for praise and worship. But, and this is coming from somebody that is not a gospel artist, but I'm very sensitive to the gospel field. I have a lot of friends that do gospel. I've studied so much of gospel in my artistic journey because it's such a dense wealth of musical knowledge. It is the core of the Black music tradition. There are gospel songs that are specifically written to be congregationals, to be something that churches can learn and incorporate into their praise and worship. And then there are gospel songs that are meant for concerts. They're more engaging, they're less repetitive, they are more musically interesting a lot of the time. And if you're going to go the gospel route, if you're not playing a gospel concert and you have not been tasked with opening the show with praise and worship, you need to pick concert repertoire. But that's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem was this artist was announced as an R&B and soul artist and then got up and did an exclusively gospel set list. There's nothing wrong with exploring other genres. But I find that when you write a bio and submit it, because 9 times out of 10, when you book a gig and there's an MC and they read your bio, you or your management team have written this bio and pre approved it. And this bio establishes an expectation in the mind of the audience based on the verbiage. The verbiage of the bio provides context of who you are when you aren't someone, air quotes, already. So if this artist was going to get up there and do a gospel set, she should have written her bio differently. She should have prepared us as a gospel artist that combines, I don't know, the traditionalism of the Black gospel experience with the grooves and soul of contemporary R&B. I don't know. I'm not a I'm not a publicist. It's not my job. But I recognized an immediate problem. And it disengaged me from being interested in what she had to offer because I was just hit with so many random pieces of information. This performance made me wholly unaware of who she was as an artist. Her bio said one thing, her song choice said another thing, her performance style said a completely other thing. And none of the three things worked in alignment with each other. You have to understand what you're doing and how you're marketing it to people. Because people don't like what they don't understand, what they can't grasp. I am a teacher through and through. I love explaining things. I love being asked questions that force me to challenge my own way of thinking or examine a subconscious philosophy I've had and forces me to articulate that subconscious philosophy into something tangible that I can share. And so, in my bio, I have added the fact that I'm an educator because a lot of the times I'll pick repertoire that are deep cuts but have some historical connection to the Black community, or I'll find just have an intriguing historical context. And when I'm introducing, I sort of use it as a little lesson. When I'm introducing the repertoire, I sort of give a mini lesson and walkthrough on the piece. And people have told me, I love that you mentioned that you're an educator because you tie it into the experience and it feels like a class on top of the performance. It feels like a master class is happening. I know my lane. I know my niche. I know who I am, and I know how to prepare the audience expectation for what I'm going to present. Another point that ties into what we talked about. So first, we talked about audience expectation. On the other side of audience expectation is being mindful of the space you're going into. So, if this is an R&B festival, chances are you should probably find the music in your repertoire that you feel aligns best with what the viewership is expecting. That's not to say you shouldn't be cutting edge. That's not to say you shouldn't be interesting. That's not to say you should not be your fullest self. This is why I specifically said finding a niche, not finding a genre. Music is so vast and diverse that you can build a repertoire that accentuates your artistic ability while transcending genre. And then when you're booked within the confines of a genre, you have an armory of different songs that you can choose from to perfectly showcase who you are without uncomfortably disrupting your audience. This artist picked gospel songs to open up. There are a surplus of gospel songs that sound like R&B tunes. So if you wanted to be a gospel artist playing an R&B festival, find the music that bridges the gap. If you're going to be a jazz artist playing an R&B festival, find the music that bridges the gap. If you're an R&B artist doing a jazz festival, which I have split feelings about personally, find the music that bridges the gap. I have a mental checklist when I'm building a show. I look at the types of act that the venue normally draws in that draw a strong audience, so I understand what their regular demographic is and what their interests are. I look at the size of the venue. I look at the size of the stage. I look at the budget, because the size of the stage, the size of the venue, and the size of the budget will determine how I pick my repertoire and orchestrate my show. And some of you who are not musicians per se may wonder, well, what does the size of the venue have to do with anything? Well, I'm not going to take Beyonce Renaissance tour level arrangements with, a gigantic string section and, a full big band and all these synthesizers and two drummers and a percussionist. I'm not going to take all that music to a space that only seats 150 people. Because while I want to wow them, I don't want to make people uncomfortable in the wrong ways. If it's 150 people, depending on are they standing? Are they sitting? Is it compact? Is it spacious? Do I need my sound to reach out and pull the people in the back of the room in? Or are they sitting so close up on me, I almost need my sound to weave through the audience like smoke filling a room? These are a bunch of things to look at. And after I see, okay, this is the orchestration I'm limited to, or this is the orchestration I'm choosing will serve this venue best, and this is my budget for how many musicians I can bring, and this is the demographic usually of this establishment. What songs in my repertoire highlight my storytelling abilities, my tone, my range, while also bridging the gap of expectation for the general audience demographic of this venue? You see how much thought goes into that? It's not just, oh, well, I like singing this song, so I'm going to throw this song in my show. And I'm being honest, for a long time for me, it was. And then I would do it and get a flatline response. I would get a response from the audience that made me want to go home and curl up in a ball and say, I'll never do this again. It wasn't their fault. They did not understand what they were being presented with. Because just a good voice is not an artist. Just a good singer, having talent does not make you an artist. It makes you talented. But artistry is a craft in and of itself. It's its own thing. And you have to find your niche. You have to find that place where you fit in. Notice I didn't conform and just pick repertoire that the other artists did. I picked repertoire that was already in my catalog that bridges the gap between the fullness of what I do and the expectation of what the audience normally looks for. That requires deep introspection. That requires you to understand who you are. And that requires you to be aware of what other people in the industry are doing in your space and in spaces adjacent to yours. Have you ever heard of product testers? This feels like a tangent, but it's not. Product testers are people that are brought in by the marketing teams of big companies to see if a thing is going to work or if it isn't. I treat open mics like product testers. So a lot of the times I can play my own music, or I'll explore genre at open mics of different genres. I'll pick a piece of repertoire that fits the genre of that open mic, and I'll go and test it out for believability on that audience. I'm thinking like I work in marketing, because building your show is marketing yourself. The repertoire you pick is your marketing. The fact that marketing departments exist is proof enough that there's a science to understanding consumers. And unfortunately, when you become an artist, you are branding your talent for consumption. You take your talent, you take your skill, you take your talent, your skill, your visual identity, and your creativity, and you find how to package them to be consumed by someone that does not know you, that has not watched your journey, has zero emotional stock in you, and yet is going to spend their money on the package, on the product that is you. If you're unaware of your lane, how will you be able to create a package that makes sense? You can't. You legitimately just cannot. It will not work. You may get lucky and have the greatest voice that God has ever dropped on this planet. And the people that are the tastemakers will see right past your innate gift to your lack of development. And you may find people that are willing to sow into you to help you develop. But a lot of times they're going to be like, wow, that voice is amazing. Anyway, what are we having for dinner tonight? Oh, did you buy those tickets for that seasoned artist? The one who shows we love? Talent is great. Technique is king to a point. Is it a complete package? Do you understand your identity so that you can maneuver within your lane and continue to grow? It's okay to explore. These are not things that you have to understand immediately in your artistic journey. You're not going to understand them immediately. It's okay to experiment. It's okay to try things and say, no, that doesn't work for me. That's what I do at the open mics. I try out a piece. No, it worked. Yes, it worked. No, it didn't work. Okay, add it to the book. No, throw it away. Maybe try it with a different band. See if it was, take note of what worked and what didn't. And if you're willing to make changes to make it work, experiment and wander around within your gift, within your search for your identity. I'm pretty positive that everybody who's listening to my podcast has heard of Aretha Franklin. Well, in the first 6 years of her career, Aretha Franklin put out 10 albums. The first 9 were with, I believe, Columbia Records. And then the 10th was her first album with Atlantic. Aretha Franklin was one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. A powerhouse vocalist, a pianist, a songwriter. Her sisters were songwriters. She was incomparable. We recognize her today as a legend, with her first album coming out in like 1961. That first album didn't chart. Her second album didn't chart. Her third album came in at number 69 on the charts. That was it. Her fourth album, nothing. Fifth album, nothing. Sixth album, number 84 on the chart. Seventh album, 101 on the chart. Eighth album, 132 on the chart. Ninth album, nothing. All these albums were jazz records. Except the ninth one. That one ebbed and flowed between jazz and the traditional pop of the time. As pop as you could get with Aretha Franklin. She made 9 jazz albums in 6 years, which is impressive, and she did them so well. But people were unsure of what to feel about her because she had this big gospel sound and this larger than life voice. And it just wasn't perfectly aligning with how she was being musically presented. Her 10th album, I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, was a complete redirect in her marketing to being a soul artist. That 10th album, number 2 on the charts, number 1 on the R&B chart, and certified gold. Does that mean she shouldn't have done those first 9 albums? No. She had some great work on those first 9 albums. And it got her to be noticed by a whole other record company to make album number 10 that would then skyrocket her career into the future. For the next 10 years, she didn't leave the top 20. Number 2, number 5, number 8, number 3, number 4, number 7. It goes down the line. And even as her career went on, she explored other genres, some successful, some not. She was always Aretha. She always brought her visual identity, her vocal identity into those spaces, but she explored different genres. It's important to explore so that you can get an understanding of, okay, I think this is my sound. I think this is who I am vocally. I think this is who I want to present myself to the audience as. This is the story I'm telling, right? I'm not going to give Frankie Valli the same marketing scheme I'm going to give Aretha Franklin. I'm not going to brand them the same. They have different voices. They have different repertoire choices. They have completely different arrangement styles. It's so important. So important to understand who you are so that other people can understand who you are. Because if you don't know who you are, how can you sell you? How can you market you if you don't know who you are? You can't sell a product you don't understand. You can try. You can BS your way to kingdom come. But the discerning consumer is going to look right past you. They don't really know what that is either. So I'm not going to get into it. And it's a shame because a lot of great talents will be overlooked because they do not understand who they are as a product, as an artistry package. When you understand who you are as an artist, as a package, and what you bring to the table, I think you'd be shocked at the doors that will open because people will know exactly where to place you, exactly when to call you. I've watched people say, oh, they're a really good singer, but I don't know if they can do this. I don't know if that fits with this show. I have been misbooked. I have had terrible experiences being booked for events that I didn't really fit into visually and sonically because I croon and I sound like R&B, old school R&B to a point, but I'm not a showman. And I was booked in a space that was looking for more of a performer and less of a crooner. And the booking agent was just so enamored with my voice that they looked beyond my visual identity or were underinformed to my artistic identity and booked me in a space where my performance hindered the flow of the event. And I can honestly admit that. And a good portion of that is my fault. I have learned to say no to things that I have learned to say no to things that do not fit my brand. I have learned to say no to things that I know I'm not a good fit for. And I've learned to reach out and say, no, I don't think you understand how well what I do will gel with what you have. Here's a demo. Here's a reel. Here's a snippet so I can prove to you what I'm talking about. The last thing I'll say about this is that social media is absolutely your friend in the journey of exploring your lane. Because social media is not like putting out an album. Recording covers and putting them on social media is not like putting together an official project. Because official projects have to be a bit more coherent, I would say. And your social media needs to be visually coherent and needs to have an aesthetic and needs to be modeled when you're becoming an artist. It needs to be manicured. However, it's an easy way to test out, how are they responding to me exploring this genre? How are they responding to me taking my niche and applying it to this particular song that they're all familiar with? And is my reinterpretation truly delivering what I'm looking for? I found out that the adult contemporary crowd really loved me because of social media. I posted a cover of a Carole King song a couple years ago. What was it? Oh, Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow? I posted it and I went to bed. And I woke up and my post had a decent amount of attention. And I saw that Carole King herself had liked the post and commented on it. And I was like, oh, okay, so Carole King enjoyed it. My best friend called me and told me Carole King posted it on her page and it had like some 40,000 views, which is a lot for me having not more than, 100 views at a time at the time. And it was just something I was like, I really relate to this story and I feel like it fits my voice. And I did it how I do it. I didn't do it how Carole King does it. And Carole King loved it so much, she shared it with her audience, and her audience loved it. And I got followers that still follow me today because of that little experiment. Same thing happened with James Taylor's Fire and Rain a few years ago when I first moved to Atlanta. I had a hard day at work, and I came and I sat down and I had that song on my mind, and I sat at the piano and I played it and sang it. A few days later, James Taylor liked, commented, reshared it on his page, and I got a couple of followers from that. And so, without having to make these big, grand, catered changes because of preconceived expectations, social media is sort of a no man's land in that way. I can test it out and see what works and what doesn't. Only on social media will I get great attention for, not only on social media, let me rephrase that, but social media is unique in that I got great attention from a Carole King tune, a James Taylor tune. I covered a Kim Burrell tune and it did great for me on my page. And then Luther's So Amazing did fantastic for me on my page. So my voice was the unifying factor and my musicianship because I was playing piano. So they all were sonically similar because it was my musical voice being applied to them. See, we're still thinking about that packaged identity. But social media was a perfect testing ground. And so I actually did an intimate show around the piano combining a mixed variety of repertoire like that. And it was a success because I had seen, okay, this actually works. This works for me. I'm a little old school. I'm very acoustically driven. So if I arrange this show like this, I think it can sonically work, despite the fact that all these genres are so wholly different. But I only learned that by experimenting. And then they only worked because in the experimentation, I was telling my truth, my musical truth, and making it believable. See how it all ties in together, all these lessons from all these weeks. Believability combined with artistic identity equals success. No matter how you measure that success, I'm not viral to the point where I have 1,000,000 views on this and 1,000,000 views on that. But 40,000 compared to my 100 is a great success for me. And it can be a great success for you too. I urge you to endeavor into understanding yourself. Take the journey to understand you. Listen to yourself critically, not judgmentally, critically, and go, okay, these are the type of songs I'm choosing. What other artists are kind of singing similar repertoire? Okay, these are the artists whose shows I think work for the music I do. How can I craft my show this way? Okay, let me actually go on their website and read their bio and see how they're being packaged and marketed and see how I can use this information to create a solid visual identity, solid marketing identity for myself. And grow and be great. Let all the tools available to you work in your favor. Let social media work for you. Let Google work for you so that you can work and be successful. If I can leave you with anything, I would say that don't let ignorance hinder you from your greatness. Use the resources available to you. We live in an era of information. Look at what has worked historically and what hasn't. Even what has changed the game when it was considered avant garde. Do the research and find your people. You're unique, but you're always going to have some similarities to somebody. Use this era of information to find your people and arm yourself and mold yourself into the path of greatness, of great success. I'd like to hope that my podcast is one of your tools. I'd like to believe that the information that I give you all is just another tool to say, oh, I didn't think to do that. Oh, okay, I'm not the only person that feels like this. Okay, well, I feel validated now and I'm going to keep going. I hope this podcast can be part of this great era of information and give you the tools for success. I hope this podcast will help you get in tune, if you will, with your greatest you. And with that, have a good morning, good evening, good afternoon, hello, and goodbye.